Ladies and gentlemen, this is the state of the scene.
Yo, what the fuck is up, Warped Tour? The state of the scene at SOTSPodcast on all social media. Sam here with Marcos. What the fuck is up, Marcos?
Howdy.
We got a big episode for everybody this week. We're going to talk about the brand new album From a Day to Remember, which is now streaming for everyone. We're going to talk about a fucking 9-minute opus from Yungblud. We're going to talk about a heartfelt tribute from MGK. Sleep Token might be the biggest band in the world. Babymetal are coming to North America. A lot going on, but before we get to all that, I think we just catch up real quick. You been up to anything? Bro, you ain't ever up to shit. You're fucking killing me, bro.
I had a major accomplishment in my life take place over the past week.
Okay.
I finally finished the final Balatro challenge that I had left.
Bro, Balatro.
20 of 20 challenges complete. You're looking at a fucking goat right now. For those who don't know, Balatro is a fucking poker-like game. It ends up being a lot more than poker, really fast. And, you know, that's really the best way to explain it.
That sounds great. Does this mean you'll finally move on to a new game?
I don't think I can.
Okay,
But
sure.
but what I will say is, so I've been playing that on like Switch and mobile, but it ends up being one of those things where like the challenges have been my anchor playing that game for like the past month or so.
Anchor and what? What do you mean anchor?
Like that's all I've been playing. It's like there are challenges where it's like, hey, you know, these couple of jokers, which are like things that like kind of power your run, are locked and you can't get rid of them, and like sometimes they suck. Or like, hey, you must win this this run without using a single joker.
And now you're gonna move on to like what, career mode? Like where do you go
I don't know.
here?
Like I guess I just have to go and get like there's different stakes that you can play at, and like green or red or something is like the easiest. It goes all the way up to gold stake, and they put like all these sorts of like, hey, you know, jokers cost more money now, or you make less money now, and that sort of stuff.
Let me ask you a question.
And I there's like 20 decks that you can play that all have different like cool things about them.
Sure.
So like now I can go get gold on every single one of those, but like there's less drive to do it.
Major life accomplishment, you said?
Major life accomplishment.
You excited to play Balatro on the Switch too in a month?
You bet.
Yeah, me too.
So honestly, talking about video games a little bit, talking about Switch, talking about Nintendo, Sam.
Yeah.
I think like the most excited I've been for a new game all year long is like the prospect of Mario Kart like releasing with new maps and new characters and that sort of stuff.
Which is almost like certified gonna happen based on like that early teaser. Yeah, I'm with you. Like I'm excited for a new Mario Kart too. Like do something different. I'm sick of this one.
Yeah.
We've seen cars turn into airplanes and go underwater. Boring.
That was a
Do
Pixar
something
movie.
new. Whatever. I went to an estate sale this morning. Like the day we're recording this. And
you're just out here just fucking checking off like side quests, huh?
Yeah, I'm doing the things senior retirees do in their free time. I had a morbid thought though when we went to these things, which I think I share with a lot of people, which is that essentially an estate sale is like you get old and die, and all your family comes together,
and then a podcaster comes and fucking rummages through your things.
Yeah, and then all your family gets together, and they're like, does anybody want any of this shit? And like, no. Everyone's like, nah, I'm good. So they take all that shit and they just like slap a price tag on it, and then everybody gets to come into your house where you used to live before you died and rifle through it.
How badly, like, as you're talking through all this,
yeah.
Not only would I haunt the living fuck out of my family,
yeah,
after the fact, like you don't want my fucking vinyl collection, you don't want my VHS collection.
That's what I mean. Like I walk into this house and I'm like,
and then I'm also fucking haunting you and every other person who comes to rummage through my things.
Exactly. That's where I'm going. Like I'm sitting there looking at his collection of fucking like Christmas ornaments, and I'm like, trash. Like I'm going through clothes in the closet. I'm like, these fits are terrible. Like you imagine your ghost ass just sitting in the same room listening to me
go
like
through
talk
someone's
shit.
clothes in their closet knowing like why I'm there doing it.
They're not gonna wear them anymore, bro. I'm downstairs looking at like your championship Celtics 1999 signed basketball,
You
and
didn't
I'm
want to
like,
grab that for me?
$8? You fucking kidding me right now? This piece of shit.
So I think like marked, like
Talking down a grieving mother to like $4.
Tagged everything.
Yeah, that's all they do. It's like you just go through the house. It's like, here's all these plates. You want them? Like, no. It's like, here are all these fucking tools. People like fucking shoving their way past you. It was like, oh fuck, are these fucking Vietnamese, man? And I'm like,
People shoving
knock
their ways
yourself
past.
up. People are very serious about this shit. So we get to this house. It was like me and our dad, right? And there's a line out the door already, right? And we're just like hanging out. We're standing in line. A lot of shark looking types. You know what I mean? A lot of people rubbing their fucking hands together. Like, oh, I can't wait to get my hands on all this shit, right? Turns out it's all garbage. So I don't know what the fuck anybody found in there that was like worth anyone's time, especially standing outside in the cold for like an hour to get into that fucking house.
You stood outside for an hour.
We stood outside for like
You're admitting this?
20 minutes, but there were people already there. So like clearly like we were beaten to the punch on this one. You know what I mean?
All right.
Real go-getters, not us. They
What
had
were
grind
you
set.
looking to
We
go
didn't.
grab?
I don't even fucking know if I'm being terribly honest with you. I have this like idea in my head that I'm going to stumble upon something like, he's got an original fucking Nintendo.
Unopened fucking Pokemon packs from like 2001.
Yeah. He's got the first print edition of the Yu-Gi-Oh movie. Like, I don't fucking know, dog. Like something. But like I get in there and it's like he's got 1,100 crossword puzzle books. I'm like, fuck off.
Bro, honestly sounded like a vibe.
Yeah, it was great. You should come next time. I also watched Adolescence on Netflix. Have you heard about this?
No.
You haven't heard about this?
I don't think so.
This TV show is taking the
It's not.
world by storm.
All I've heard about from Netflix is that fucking Electric State movie from the Russo brothers.
Nah,
which is
that's
supposed to be,
like, okay.
the most soulless movie ever made.
Right. And then alternatively, here's like Netflix actually doing something good. So the plot of Adolescence is, and like fucking the softest spoilers imaginable, but this is like the premise, is essentially a kid gets accused of murdering another kid.
Okay.
And then like you go through like a few episodes of different perspectives on the fallout from that. Right? So it's like, all right, you follow like the cops go to the school and they're like investigating.
Pause?
Yeah,
Can
go
we
ahead.
pause?
Yeah.
I watched the funniest TikTok in the world the other day, which is someone has to explain everything in Fortnite terms to somebody for them to understand. So they're sitting in the car and he gets a text and he's like, my dad just said my grandmother died. And then the other guy's got to be like, so what that means is you guys were going to land at fucking like Twin City Towers or whatever the fuck the Fortnite terms are. Like explain. And then eventually like it clicks and he starts crying because he realizes
Twin Towers in Fortnite?
The fucking the goofy goggly tower. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't play Fortnite.
Are you saying I have to explain this to you in like fucking Balatro terms for you to understand or some shit?
I was thinking you have to do this in like metalcore terms. So it's like, so killed is like, imagine crowd killing someone at a show, but they don't get up.
I'm with you. Okay. So imagine you only ever read tweets from far-right Republican metalcore vocalists.
No.
And you're at a young, impressionable age, so it warps your mind into thinking less of women, and ultimately that leads to murder.
No.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Essentially, the whole premise of the show is like this kid's like staying up till 3 a.m. every night watching like Andrew Tate videos with his friends, and it completely warps his fucking brain, bro. It's like scary, but then like eerily also like this is real, like too real.
So goes out and kills someone. Like it's like a legal proceeding thing then, or?
Allegedly. No, it never gets quite to the legal proceeding. It's just like one episode's about like the two detectives going to the school and kind of like talking to all the friends, but then also kind of getting a vibe for like the school system. Another episode's about like the family dealing with the fallout of it, of like their kid murdered somebody else allegedly, and like how they get treated by everybody else in like their town and stuff like that. Like they become like, what's the word I'm looking for? Pariahs or something.
And this is getting like rave reviews.
This is like one of the highest rated
never heard of
things
this.
Netflix has ever put out. Like this is fucking all I saw on my Twitter. So like you got to fix your algorithm so like the good shit pops up and not just...
I know I got to fix my algorithm. Don't get me started on my algorithm.
I watched like 2 seconds of Electric State. That looks like the biggest piece of shit on the fucking planet, bro. I tried and I just couldn't do it either. It was so bad. It was like my parents are dead. No, they weren't killed by robots. They died on a fucking train accident or something.
I'd like
I don't
to think
know.
this
It was
is
so
Chris
fucking
Pratt's
dumb, bro.
lines.
It was so fucking dumb. That would be funny, wouldn't it? No, Chris Pratt assuredly plays like an aloof, kind of cool guy who hates robots like Will Smith or something. You know what I mean? Yeah.
I had one more thing I wanted to talk about, bro, which is...
Oh my God, you got 2 things this week?
I've got 2 things this week. Well, I was thinking. I'm sitting here thinking about the things that I'd like to discuss.
Sure.
And one of them is the fact that you can't find good bookmarks anywhere.
All right. I'm
Sit down and actually think about the last time you found a good bookmark.
Have you tried Barnes and Nobles?
I have. So that's where
No, you didn't fuck with a single bookmark there?
So I found 2 that I liked. The girlfriend reads a whole bunch. I'm trying to like jump back into it as much as I can.
This is crazy because you don't read, so I didn't know.
But I buy books.
Yeah.
So like I am planting the seeds.
Yeah. I like.
Eventually,
the idea...
I'll look at enough like books stacked on my like side table and think to myself, like, I really need to like open one of these.
What Marcos does is he carries a book with him and he just puts the bookmark in like 300 pages deep to give people the idea that
So anyway, like I'm at Barnes and Nobles and they've got like a whole fucking a tower that you can like fucking rotate.
Yeah, the bookmark display.
Yeah, and I'm looking through it and
the
all
twin
I found
bookmark
was,
towers. Yeah,
I found like 2 cool like the Rawdale like illustrations of like the BFG, the big fucking giant.
Yeah.
And like it may have been like Willy Wonka doing his fucking
James and the Giant Peach.
His jump, and he has like his wand or whatever the fuck he has.
Yeah.
And like those are the 2 cool ones I found, and then everything else is just like, yeah, I'm a reader. Like, of course I read. Like,
there's gotta be a lot
of like millennial shit, millennial maxed out.
Yeah. Like, I love books
but not as much as I love coffee and fucking stuff like that.
Do you think we'll ever get to a point where that kind of stuff will become like ironically cool? Will you wear t-shirts that are like coffee first, then work? You know what I mean?
We already peaked in our scene with that type of shit. Like
we did.
Yeah, like
when
fucking all the stupid like massive text.
Yeah, but I'm saying like make it kind of, you know how you used to be able to like go to the beach and then like whatever popular catchphase like Bazinga happened on like a fucking TV show, you could just buy that shirt. Yeah, whatever. Hey. But what I'm saying is, do you think like, because ironically everything becomes cool, like are people just gonna start wearing like a "That's What She Said" T-shirt, but it'll actually not be the dumbest shit you've ever seen in your life?
No, I'm already seeing some of that stuff.
Gamer for life, you know what I mean?
No, I'm already seeing that stuff.
You're already seeing that shit?
You've got to like upgrade your TikTok FYP.
I don't want to.
So wait, and all the rest of them are just like,
yeah, it's like Harry Potter and Hunger Games and Twilight,
Ron Weasley, right? When he was 11, like smirking, and it's like. Mm-hmm. Here's it says like Eclipse, and it's like the Twilight thing, and it's like all of these are bad, and then you go to like Amazon and you look for some, and it's like all of those suck too, and they're all like weird sizes, or they have like beads or something off this. I just want a nice normal fucking like bookmark.
Yeah, you just want a bookmark that says Whitechapel
and so
on
all
it or
of
some
this
shit. Yeah.
Yes, was leading me to the thought process that I've never seen a banned bookmark. You have all of these bands putting out books, Sleep Tokens, Spiritbox, fucking comics, Bad Omens, Water Parks. Austin Knight put out a book. Keith Buckley's put out books. Every Time I Die, Many Eyes, whatever that band is. But no bookmarks is what I'm saying, Sam. Where there's a fucking need.
It's a good idea. You should TM it real quick. You should copyright that shit and then run with it, okay?
Fucking spicy talk book Twitter.
Yeah.
Everyone there wants to fuck Vessel, but there's no good Sleep Token fucking bookmarks.
That's unfortunate.
It's an epidemic, Sam.
Like you have a bookmark that's like you put it in just deep enough where it's like the mask covering his face. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah, I'd be into that. Every link you need can be found in the description of this episode, including our playlist updated weekly with every song you hear on the show. And more, plus socials, merch store, Discord, Patreon. Patreon.com/SOTSPodcast. All patrons receive access to our deluxe episode feed. Marcos, this week, we talk about the most fucked up band breakup in a minute. Gel called it a day and blamed their guitarist being a certified fucking gooner, among other things.
Among other awful things.
Among other awful things.
But the lead that I do not want to bury here is how Gel were about to pop the fuck off. They had a tour lined up opening for Spiritbox, that's the one with Dying Wish and Loathe on it as well.
Yeah.
They were about to have a big year. They had a cool EP that dropped last year.
They were supposed to like tour Europe with like Volbeat too. Like the shows they had lined up were fucking astronomically good.
This is a fucking sad loss. It sucks. And we get into it. You'll understand why they call it quits. But it is a damn shame that this band has called it quits. So definitely check out the Patron feed for our take on that.
Patreon.com/SOTSPodcast. Sign up for as low as $3 a month. Link in the description of this episode. In the news this week.
The news.
Sleep Token has surpassed 5 million monthly listeners on Spotify. Emergence, their brand new single, is over 14 million streams after approximately 1 week since its release. Marcos, unprecedented?
Bro, and I'm 6.9 million of those streams.
That's impressive, but not surprising at all, considering you are Sleep Token's biggest fan.
I am Sleep Token's longest and biggest fan.
And tallest.
And
best looking, if we're being honest with ourselves. This is big because at the current rate...
Why, Sam?
At the current rate...
You did the math?
I'm saying we're 2 months out from 100 million on Emergence, which I guess if my Spotify math checks out would make them like a 10 million monthly listener band.
So,
which means they're going to surpass a lot of other fucking bands who you think are big.
Yeah. Officially passed A Day to Remember.
Yeah.
Who were at, interestingly enough, at 5.5. They took a decrease this week because
what the fuck? How do you take a decrease when you drop your new album?
It's funny, right? The review prep that I did went and took the monthly listeners like 4 days ago, and then I checked again today and it went down. So
do you think that's collusion? Like Big Spotify is coming for A Day to Remember?
Fucking collusion. Sleep Token are coming for A Day to Remember. They're coming for everybody.
It's coming for everybody. I think you pointed one out to me that was interesting, which is that like Bad Omen still has more monthly listeners.
They may not anymore. They were up in the 5 or the 6 as well. But at the end of the day, right, is Sleep Token are about to surpass pretty much anyone not named Bring Me.
Yeah, that's how it's looking. Like,
it sounded like the bigger bands we cover, like Linkin Park and Paramore and
MGK. We'll talk about a little bit. Yeah. But they're like catching up. So like this is one single in. Never mind that they got more singles coming and an album on the horizon.
Well, so important to note too. It's like I also don't see that number going down for this band entering into a new tier.
Yeah,
for this next era, right? Because they probably hovered around 3.54 million for the past like year where they've not been releasing music.
I see what you mean. So they have like a new bottom, which is to say that
5 to me is the bottom, because the only thing that slows down a song like Emergence from hitting 100 million streams is if they toss another single in the mix, which they probably will. But ultimately what we're looking at is 2 months down the line from now, if Emergence hasn't hit 100 million or whatever has happened, they're releasing a new album. And that is going to fucking obliterate their top 10 most streamed songs on Spotify. It's probably going to eventually turn all into that, knowing this band. So like, yeah, we're looking at a new floor. Like 5 million is the new floor for this band. When it's all said and done at the end of this year, and maybe we'll have the foresight to go back and listen to this moment. They're probably sitting at like 10 million for sure. Like you said earlier.
You know what's curious is that, like, for all intents and purposes, I wouldn't consider Emergence to be a song that has had some sort of virality behind it to help push it, similarly to Summoning, which, like, caught everybody off guard and then ended up really helping this band explode.
The
sax
quite
stuff
as
is
crazy.
Something, but I mean, like, are you seeing, all right, like in your time spent on, say, TikTok, do you generally get fed a lot of videos with Emergence? Like, are you sort of seeing something happening with that song?
It depends on how much you're willing to interact with it, right? So I liked one, and then suddenly I saw like 4 more. So like, if you don't like it, it's not going to show up on that FYP. It's just like the algorithm, whatever. But once I started like liking these, it's all that started showing up, and suddenly you've got like the member of Bill Murray who played the saxophone walking through an airport, and they're like,
Gabby Rose.
Does everyone, Gabby, and it's like them walking through an airport and there's like text on the screen while the song plays. And it's like, do you think everyone knows that I did saxophone on this new Sleep Token track?
Fine.
And then it's like these crazy, like talented musicians talking about like reacting to like how the rap verses are syncopated and that sort of stuff.
Right.
And it's like, okay, so that's the virality that I'm seeing.
Juilliard School of Music reacts to Sleep Token. Yeah.
So in that sense, I think there has been virality around it. On top of the fact that like this band fucking kept Selena Gomez from getting a number one hit single this week or some shit.
So this was very specific to like Forbes ran an article that was like metal band stops Selena Gomez from hitting number one. And what it was specifically is that like on iTunes, like enough people had like streamed and or bought this song that it like kept her from that specific chart topping feat. Which is crazy at this point, is that like we have like 25 different charts to measure like success at this point. It's like middle of Spotify's top 100, but like top of iTunes, like it's kind of impressive like where a band can take off or like the difference between two of them. But yeah, essentially Sleep Token is bigger than Selena Gomez now. That was the biggest takeaway. Yeah.
And her husband fucking Benny Blanco, whatever his name is.
Who I specifically know from the Lil Dicky TV show. To add on top of this, Marcus, Emergence debuted at number 2 on the Billboard Hot Hard Rock Songs chart, but I think it was like on the basis of only a few days. So this looks like it's going to be the only song so far this year that has a shot at knocking Linkin Park from the top.
I was going to say like there is like that's the mammoth that they just couldn't.
Right. So the Emptiness Machine has been number 1 for 25 straight weeks. The problem here, though, is Sleep Token's got about a sweet window where they might be able to snag 1 week at number 1 before Linkin Park drops a brand new song next Friday.
It's, I've got to imagine, like, it's either in crazy coincidence that suddenly this band is gearing up to what probably is like a deluxe album, drop this new song, or they had fucking intel, they had an inside man, they knew that fucking Sleep Token was about to come out, and they had to be ready.
That's interesting. So you're saying that Linkin Park was sweating a little seeing Sleep Token?
Think everyone is sweating seeing Sleep Token suddenly.
It does feel that way, to be honest with you, Marco. Some more stuff in the charts this week. Spiritbox currently have a whopping 9 songs on that same hot hard rock Billboard song chart. It's the first 9 songs on Tsunami C, so it's just the whole album kind of like doing gangbusters. Tsunami C itself charted at 26 on the Billboard Top 200, which I thought was fairly solid.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's pretty solid. And then Imminence entered the Billboard Hot Hard Rock Songs chart for the first time ever in their career with new single God-Fearing Man. So it's been nice to see that band sort of steadily grow and get more and more popular. I was right about them a year ago when I said they were the next big thing.
You were right.
I was fucking right, bro. Babymetal have announced a North American headlining tour with support from Black Veil Brides, Ginger, and Bloodywood. Marcos, can I get a quick take on this?
This is a pretty crazy tour. I don't ultimately know if this is one I end up wanting to like actually attend, but I think I'm looking at a lineup of Babymetal headlining, and like that alone is enough to really get me like interested.
Bloodywood's the big one for me here that I see, and I'm like, that is a fucking band I would like to see live.
Well, I really enjoyed that Ginger album that dropped this year too. And then on top of that, like Black Veil Brides, like in the middle of all this is just so fascinating to me that like this is such a cool bill to potentially like, this is one of those bills where it's like 10 years ago or 10 years from now, you're like, holy shit, that happened.
Right. I had a chance to see this and I fucking blew it.
Right.
The only band on here who doesn't have brand new music coming out is Babymetal, to be fair, and Black Veil Brides. I had to step back and sort of reconsider my statement there for a second because I realized that Babymetal actually hasn't had any new music. It's just all of their fucking collaborations they've had, right? So it's like
counts.
Kind of had a new song with Electric Callboy, kind of have that new song with Bloodywood, but it seems like that's a Bloodywood song and that's an Electric Callboy song. So we're like due for a new fucking Babymetal song.
You really fucking threw me saying though that like, you know what? In all fairness, only 50% of the bill hasn't had new music coming out.
I fucked it up. The second I took a moment to think about it, Marcos. Black Veil Brides, I think, are really due to drop a brand new song. Obviously, we got Bleeders like last fucking April, but I think we need to keep riding that wave and dropping new music.
I think a lot of the rest of that EP was obviously really underwhelming. You had like a fucking cover and an Apple specific, and maybe that was the cover as well. A lot of weird stuff there that I think sort of took some of the wind out of the sails, but like Bleeders did really well for that band, and I'm fascinated to see what the true follow-up to that track might be. I think Black Veil Brides and Andy Black specifically maybe don't get enough credit for how so Andy Black specifically, like he has like I think it was like an audiobook vinyl that was published talking about like not Mark Twain.
Where the fuck are you going with this? I'm deeply curious.
There's like an audiobook that came out on vinyl that was Andy Black doing like short horror stories or stuff like that. So like there's an angle that this band can take that is similar to Bleeders, and having like more songs maybe like that.
You're saying double down on like this concept approach.
Like do their own Silver Scream type thing that like could really end up being
it's a fun idea.
A really both fascinating and really great record. So I mean,
you say all this like this band hasn't had a conceptual record where they did have like storybook companion pieces to it and everything, right?
Who did the fucking Raven? Edgar Allan Poe.
Yes.
And yeah, so that's like the thing that, you know, Andy Black did. Like that sort of stuff is like in the back of my mind. I'm like, this band could really produce something special from like somewhat known IP is what I'm saying.
I mean, they created their own story one time, right? Like that whole fucking In the End song and that whole album,
well,
the
fucking masked Crimson Monster.
Oh
guy.
shit! Yeah,
like they've done that, but I'm saying
Scarlet,
like,
yeah.
I'm saying like they could continue down that path of like the Ice Nine Kills known IP thing.
I like the gothic aspect too. Like I think leaning into that was like really good for the band. Like it clearly matched like their just general aesthetic.
Yeah.
They were in the studio recently, so like hopefully we get something soon. Hayley Williams shares that her grandmother has held on to her beanie from the Decode music video for all of these years, Margos. Holy shit. Like entrusting your grandmother with one of the greatest like scene artifacts in history.
Hopefully safe out of her hands now and in a museum.
I know. I was thinking that same thing. It's like, now that people have this information, do you think that like, you think everybody's going around and they're looking at like, damn,
you think they're fucking circling Hayley Williams' grandmother's house on the map?
Yeah. Like you better watch your back, right? It's like suddenly people are breaking into like Hayley Williams' grandmother's house and they're stealing all of like this cool important shit, like fucking laminated like tour fucking VIP stuff.
You and me, Wet Bandit style, going fucking take on Hayley Williams' grandmother.
Yeah.
Winner takes all. We get the fucking Decode beanie. We get all the fucking tour laminates.
I would wear it out of the house. I would wear it out of that. I would wear it all the time.
What do I want? I want the...
What do you want?
I want the fucking... The leather jacket or whatever from that one music video.
Sure.
I don't know.
Yeah, the one leather jacket from the one music video.
I don't remember.
Yeah, the glasses from
yes, the glasses.
Yeah, like the rose-colored boy.
I want the light bulb from that one music video that she sings into.
You think she kept the light bulb from the one music video?
Her grandma's keeping like her grandmother is mad fucking valid, honestly, keeping all the cool shit.
I'm also thinking, are we putting... Do we get a bit of a hit list going right now where it's like, yo, what is Gerard Way's grandmother holding on to right now? You got the whole marching band outfit?
You're saying take on all the Grammys?
Yeah, like I think that these like artists thought they were like clever, but like Hayley Williams just kind of exposed everybody right now. So it's like if you just want to go like load up on like all of this valuable merchandise, like we gotta start hitting grandparent houses. That's the estate sale, right?
Shh, dog, you're blowing our cover.
Marcos, and finally, Sophie Powers auditioned for American Idol on one of the show's latest episodes and sang her original hit song, Shut the Fuck Up. Have you seen this?
She auditioned with Shut the Fuck Up?
All right.
Which, like, isn't even on streaming yet, by the way.
Yeah. She was clearly saving
Sophie
it.
actually starting to kind of piss me off.
Well,
Get that song on streaming.
No. See the vision.
Is the idea is let it take off on American Idol and then...
Clearly you didn't see this, right?
I didn't, but I know that song. Like, bro, Dinosaurs, shut the fuck up.
Not
Karen's,
only
shut the fuck up.
that
Sam, shut the fuck up.
she really got, I think it was like Blake Shelton. She really fucking got him when she said like, baby, shut the fuck up, bro. They were loving it. They were loving every fucking second of it. Like,
did she moved on?
They were doing like cutaway reality TV face, which is like, she's like, laundry, shut the fuck up. And they're like, goddamn.
I don't know. So that song's not a very like,
well, like TV friendly.
Vocally,
they censored the fuck out of it, obviously.
I would guess they censored the. That's got to be the funniest censor to watch, though. Like, unassuming, like Hayley Williams' grandmother at home watching American Idol that night.
Yeah.
Clutching the Decode beanie. Just beep. Dinosaurs beep. Babies beep.
I like the idea that she's like knitting. She's like fixing like a tear in the beanie. Yeah.
I need to go and see this. That is awesome. But what I was going to say is, not like I don't know, the vocal prowess is on real display in that track.
Yeah, no, not really. Like, it's obviously more of like a fun gimmick.
More like a songwriting prowess, but
I think the idea here is that like theoretically American Idol's actually just really looking for like TikTok stars at this point.
They are.
And Sophie Powers has that energy, has that potential.
Yeah.
What I didn't watch till the end of is to find out if they like passed her. My guess is that they unfortunately did not.
Fuck.
Mm-hmm. Moving on, in the spotlight this week.
The Spotlight.
Every single week, we, alongside of our listeners, will help shine some light on smaller bands within the scene. This week, Leota over on Patreon recommends Toothless, the new single from Loveletter. Quote, I'm quite fond of the breakdown at the end, end quote. You can follow the band at Loveletter UK on Instagram, Marcus. We checked this out too. I am also quite fond of the breakdown at the end of this song.
Quite fond of this band name, Sam. I just think this one really gets the job done. Loveletter. Just no notes.
Straight to the point.
Really like it.
And Brandon K over on Patreon recommends Driver's Side by Harrison Gordon.
And if you're gonna hit me, better be on the driver's side. 'Cause I'm missing both my headlights, and I only go out at night.
Quote, Harrison Gordon is an up-and-coming emo band from Illinois. Driver's Side is from their recently released EP, Spring Break. It's a song that accurately sums up the struggles of someone in their 20s and 30s just trying to get by, end quote. You can follow the band at HarrisonGordon_IL on Instagram. Thoughts?
Are Harrison Gordon, like, is that the name of like a B-list celebrity that I should know?
Or is it like a combination like that one band, Michael Cera Palin?
Yes, I forgot.
Yeah, it's hard to say for Harrison Gordon does sound like a 1930s detective or something.
It's just Michael Cera Palin, by the way.
What did I say?
It's just Michael Cera. Like you said, Sarah?
What did I say?
Sarah?
Yeah, I pronounced it right.
I don't know if you did.
Moving on. Dated discourse this week. TikTok shed some light on a few little-known underground bands in the alternative music
That's
scene.
great news.
Marcos.
Who?
Yeah, like, what are you thinking in your head right now? Like, who are you thinking? Like, some few underground. You're thinking like
listen,
Harrison Gordon, right?
You know, like,
you're thinking like Loveletter,
they've only
right?
got like 8 tracks. I'm thinking like maybe it's like some House of Protection, right? Like that sort of band.
Small, up and coming.
Yeah.
A lot of the bands we cover
Love
in the
is Noise.
spotlight. Yeah, like you definitely are sleeping on. Marcos, you guessed it. Number 1 at the very top.
Number 1.
Bad Omens.
Oh, fuck. I think I know them.
Bands you're sleeping on. Bad
I'm-
Omens.
I'm sleeping on them because I've damn near
Alternative
got like
music viral
if that
sensation.
band sold pillowcases, I'd be sleeping on them.
I'm trying to figure out who the audience was for this TikTok. Like, do you usually talk to K-pop fans? Like,
Have we watched it? Like, do we know if it's serious?
oh, I'm taking this at 100% face value as I
100%
take
seriousness?
everything. Yeah.
Off the charts.
Illuminating bands you're definitely sleeping on.
Well, that's one that, you know, maybe
Sleep Token.
Right. Fucking 11 million monthly listeners between the two of them and growing. That's unforgivable, Sam.
This is how easy it is over on TikTok. You know what I mean? You just present bands that like are literally massive, and you're like, bet y'all never heard of. Bet y'all fucking never heard of. Bring Me the Horizon.
Is this fucking play about us, Sam?
Bet y'all have never fucking heard of Bring Me the Horizon. They've got a couple songs with like 1,000 million streams, but y'all have probably never fucking heard of them, unfortunately.
I think 20 million streams between the three of these bands.
Insane.
Right.
Insane. This last one you're not ready for.
Okay.
You're not prepared. Mentally try to prepare yourself.
Bill Murray. Can I guess? Okay, hold on.
Bands you're definitely sleeping on, Marcos. Bad Omens, Sleep Token,
Spiritbox.
Bring Me the Horizon. Is that your final answer?
Oasis?
Paramore. You're sleeping
Why is it in top 4?
Paramore.
There's no 5?
There's no 5. Paramore, Marcos. Bands you're sleeping on. Paramore.
I mean, like, there's probably one album I can go back to and check out that I haven't spent a lot of time with, you know, like maybe what. So what could they?
Marcos, you could go to a Kroger's and hear a Paramore song.
The audience is what? Swifties? As far as like,
who can fucking say? Who can fucking say?
These can be bands that are being slept on by like. There's what, 85 billion people on this planet?
The audience
they're
are
not all listening to Bad Omens.
Cavemen from the prehistoric era. This TikTok is actually being sent back in time. It's trying to get them caught up so that they're not sleeping on Paramore when they drop their first album in like 2003.
So by this logic, who's number 5?
Oh, if I was like following the trajectory of where this list was going. Okay, I don't know. The obvious ones right here, you're thinking are like Fall Out Boy, My Chemical Romance. You're not thinking small enough. You're not thinking small enough. We gotta be go like, you're sleeping on. Y'all have never heard of Blink-182? Does that feel rational?
That feels rational.
You're sleeping on Green Day?
Green Day. Let's say Green Day. Let's say it's
Green Day. All right, so that's the top 5 most slept on bands in the scene right there. Bad Omens, Sleep Token, Bring Me the Horizon, Paramore, and Green Day.
Stamp of approval. The State of the Scene officially backs this list.
Always support small bands. New music this week. MGK has released brand new single, Your Name Forever.
Tell me, did you know it was time to say goodbye?
The song is dedicated to snowboarder and close friend to MGK, Luke Dingo Trembath, who unfortunately passed away at the age of 38. MGK wrote on Instagram, quote, "I'ma miss you, brother. I hope this song honors your epic legacy. None of this will be the same without you," end quote. Marcos, how did you feel about the song and the accompanying music video?
I mean, first and foremost, rip to Dingo. They honestly, like, the back half of this video is essentially a highlight reel of moments that Dingo was around for, like what seemed like real pivotal moments in MGK's career, just kind of showing that this person's been around since the fucking Lace Up days all the way till now, celebrating like fucking Red Rock performances. And the entire video itself is just, again, essentially a highlight reel of just, you know, moments that Dingo's caught on footage, on tour, on, you know, the set of music videos, things like that.
It's crazy you can chart the timeline based off of like MGK's haircut and like tattoos being covered up. Yeah. It's like, oh, I know like generally what era we're in. So then like seeing Dingo there for like each individual one is like a really cool way to frame like the time lapse.
Well, and it was a really eye-opening thing as far as like, yeah, this person's truly been in their life, either career,
like day one,
this
energy.
Whole time around. So like that ends up really, I don't know, this made me a little emotional as far as like, you know, this guy died young, 38, died really recently, by the way. You said he passed away, but he didn't really say when. This is only like a week or two ago max. I'm really shocked at the turnaround of, you know, this video and all that. So overall feelings, I think it's a really great song. I think it's really genuine. I think it's very touching, a very touching music video at the very least. And while I'm happy we got a new MGK song, certainly not happy at the reasoning why, the circumstances.
Yeah, tragic circumstances. But a beautiful sort of work of art here in that it's sort of dedicated to, well, it's not sort of, it is literally dedicated to his friend.
Well, and speaking of work of art, like one of the main things in the video, it sort of serves as the backdrop to the full band performance from Machine Gun Kelly, by the way. Like suddenly, like the fucking two other guitarists, MGK's got the razor blade guitar, there's
Straight
a drummer,
up, like,
there's a
six-piece.
keyboardist, and behind them is this big mural of Luke, Dingo, Trembath, and it's a really cool mural on top of it that sort of like ties everything together visually.
I think that one of the things I really like aesthetically about this is that like they're dressed all in black because it's sort of presented as like a funeral, yes, but then it overall just kind of works in terms of like this being a more rock music, rock heavy sort of stylized version of MGK. I think ultimately when I finished listening to this song, I thought that like overall this kind of like works as a cool direction that we could see his music go in moving forward, like to sort of transition a little bit out of the pop punk era into something new. And the fact that sort of like he's rapping the verses, but like
this felt
singing
fresh.
The chorus. Yeah, it was a sound that just really felt like it worked for him overall.
You said off air too, like it does truly make a difference when the rap rock being served to you is from an actual like real
like a certified rapper,
right?
Yeah,
like
yeah,
someone
yeah.
who's like has a proven like track record as far as that's concerned.
Right, strong flow, doesn't feel awkward, doesn't feel out of place. Right. Like it's just both sides of the coin work really well in here. So like this sort of new metal hard rock song actually sort of really plays to MGK sensibilities.
I think MGK continues to show that they're actually a really great like storyteller within this track as well. And then just to touch back on some of the video stuff, obviously the element of it being sort of like a funeral / celebration of life thing, everyone dressed in black, everyone who attended the filming of this video / funeral also dressed in black. Like you've got a lot of cool people who showed up as far as like obviously you got Travis Barker there, you've
Tony
got
Hawk is
Tony
one that popped out to
there.
me. Yeah.
Crazy.
Right. So then like the part of the fact is that like Luke is like a snowboarder, right? So it's like clearly he has like, you know, friendships and like multiple different like cultural entities. One interesting thing here to note about the song is that Ollie Sykes and M Shadows alongside Mod Sun are all credited with background vocals, as well as Sinister Gates being credited with playing guitar on the track. All presumably not just friends of MGK, but of Luke as well.
I think you hear all of this come together in that chorus in the way that like this is one of the strongest MGK choruses we've gotten, in my opinion. Like I think this is just a really touching song overall, like I said earlier, but I think like overall it's a really strong like melody in the chorus. And then you tell me people like Ollie Sykes threw some vocals, added them Shadows, some Mod Sun as well. Like I hear all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And additionally, it's just one thing I wanted to add with Sinister Gates on guitar is picturing him with the Razor guitar.
It's a fun idea.
A whole new like level to that.
It would have been cool. I feel like I wasn't able to pull like these individuals in any point of the video in terms of like them being at the funeral or anything. Outside of Mod Sun, I did recognize, but I'd have to go back and sort of scrub through to see if like M Shadows or Sinister Gates or Ollie Sykes were present at all.
M Shadows got like the look that I do not associate with him going on at the moment, so it's really hard to like keep track of where he might be in a video.
He's got some sort of like a cross between like a mullet and like a faux hawk or something.
Yeah, well, and he's got like some facial hair, I want to say too. So like,
but I feel like
that's
he's
not
a very
who
recognizable face. So like I would think I would be able to pull, at the very least, I would be able to pull
close my
Ollie
eyes,
Sykes
it's not that era.
immediately, you know what I mean? MGK commented late last year that it was restarting his next album from scratch with no word currently on a release date.
Interesting.
I guess I wouldn't like in my mind think that this is in any way a go-ahead single for a new album, but I guess it's theoretically possible it could end up popping up on it.
Interesting.
MGK currently stands at 13.6 million monthly listeners on Spotify. Yungblud has returned with new single Hello Heaven, Hello. Per the press release, quote, Hello Heaven Hello is the opening statement to my new album. It's a journey of self-reclamation, a goodbye to the past and how you may have known or perceived me before, and a hello to the future and where I'm going. It sets the precedent for what this album is, end quote. Marcos, this was a 9-minute song with an accompanying music video, shirtless with a horse in a winter tundra before transitioning to a more fully band-backed as well as orchestra straight-ahead performance that then flips back into an on-location sort of fade away in the last few minutes of the song. What did you think of the return of Yungblud?
I don't know if this is the direction you were expecting me to take this in, but I think generally from an artist who I've really enjoyed a lot of material from in the past, this might be one of my least favorite introductions to the next era of any artist I've ever enjoyed.
So let me take your temperature on this. What is your adoration at all for something like Queen, which I think this is clearly pulling inspiration from? Older classic rock.
I don't think that a lot of people loved the movie, but I was a big fan of Bohemian Rhapsody.
I'm asking you about, the band. Like,
yes.
This is nothing to do with the fucking movie.
Well, I'm talking about Freddie Mercury. Like, do I see Freddie Mercury in Yungblud? No, I think that this all feels...
Do you see a little bit of Mick Jagger during some of his performance? Clearly with like the body movement.
So weird and forced.
It's certainly...
I this isn't exactly the energy that I want to come at it with, but I'm being really transparent and truthful when I say that again. As far as like pressing play on a track and being fed what I ultimately got versus what I wanted, this is just absolutely not the type of music that I enjoy. It doesn't have the type of energy that I want from a Yungblud track. And I understand this whole, new journey, self-reclamation, goodbye to the past aspect of things. For me, that's like, all well and good for you, Yungblud, but for me, like, there is nothing happening here musically for me to latch onto. There's like zero melody. I don't at all enjoy the long form aspect of this music. And I'm not saying that from like a weird TikTok brain thing. It's just like, I didn't think this song needed to be as long as it is, especially when the back half is probably when it does this weird like transition and it sort of becomes a different song. That's probably the best version of Yungblud I'm hearing. And it's such a short, small part of a 9-minute track. And that's not acceptable for me.
The summation of your feelings here that I think I'm getting,
the more I sit and
is
think
that
about
his
this
reach
song,
overextended like his grasp.
Yeah, he does not have like the fucking aura that I have in my mind for like people like Mick Jagger back in the day or Freddie Mercury back in the day. Like, it all comes off really weird in this video. It doesn't work for me. The first, and I don't mean to fucking keep just piling on the punches, but like the entire first half of this music video, and initially, like, I'm not against it. Like it opens up and it's Yungblud in a field and he's got the fucking Caleb Shomo look going on. He's shirtless. He's ripped. And there's a fucking black stallion right next to him, standing in the snow as well, and there's these black roses popped up from the ground. It's
giving like the end of the Twilight movie era, right?
But the longer you watch, it turns into something more unforgivable, which is essentially just like a cologne commercial.
It does have that energy ultimately, like with the angel wings, being topless for the entire video in the snow. It feels like it's all it feels all very surface level, right? Like isn't this cool, but I'm not pulling the metaphor. And you know what I mean? Like, are you a fallen angel?
Right.
What is the horse? Why are we in the snow? But then all of it to turn into just a straight ahead performance, just sort of like it
That's where it really loses me. That's where I'm realizing that it's being presented in this really grand way. Like you've got like people seated off to the side with like these big, nice instruments, and eventually they're playing it and there's like these strings, and it's just presented in this way that doesn't land for me whatsoever. And
right. There's no connective tissue, right?
Yeah.
Or at least one that I was able to like glean from like what they were giving me. Now that does do some interesting stuff towards the latter half where it's like, it has these cutaways, which again feel a little bit like a cologne commercial where you have like the arrow sticking into Yungblud, which I'm sure is representative of some capacity of the haters taking their shots at him or something.
Yeah, well, the whole like from
I like
a
the clown makeup in the
directorial-
mirror. Like I thought that was like a kind of a neat, I thought we were trying something interesting there.
That would be like cool album artwork.
Yeah,
Directorially,
actually.
like that, or like editing wise, that's like the coolest part of this video by far, is when they do like the quick like slow down of what we're watching, like the performance sort of like fade out and
They
end.
reverse it.
They reverse, and then they start cutting in different frames of all of like these, like imagery wise, it's really cool and it's popping off, and then it sort of like lands at him sitting in front of like a grave, and it's like, okay, this is cool, and there's an energy shift in the song as well. And then it sort of just goes nowhere as well.
But there's like a solid 5 minutes where it's just him performing with like a full band, and then there's
It's
like a whole
bad,
guitar
Sam.
solo, and I think that's where I started to fade. Ultimately, like I finished this song, and I guess more than anything, I sort of felt ambivalent about it. I was like, I think it's interesting to see Yungblud sort of take a really big swing like this, but I didn't leave this song and
I
think
like
to
where the
myself,
heart is.
this, yes, like ultimately, I like the spirit, the energy behind like sort of a big swing, but I can't say that I felt like it really connected.
I think like the execution on all fronts landed so flat that for me, this is a really, really bad song.
So Yungblud's last album, self-titled, released in September of 2022. I don't believe we reviewed that on the show.
I don't remember ever checking it out, if I'm being honest with you.
My memory of it is that it had some singles that weren't really like speaking to me really early on out of the gate, like The Funeral with Ozzy Osbourne.
That song, that's the album that song ended up
That's
on,
the album. I think ultimately that album ended up being a little bit forgettable, and then it feels like Yungblud sort of like took that energy back and like went into the studio, and I don't know that we've not gotten any music from him. I think we might have gotten like the track with Ollie Sykes after the fact, like kind of like I don't want to say like a throwaway single, but like not connected to an album in any capacity. But outside of that, I think he's been relatively quiet. So this is like sort of a big, bold reintroduction to him. So it's unfortunate that like it's not really speaking to either of us. The night that we're recording this, Yungblud is actually playing an intimate show in London where he's going to debut a couple songs from the new album. I'm curious if like we get any live footage of that pops up, and maybe there's something else there that is more in line with like what we would like to see from him. There's obviously a very big difference of like where Yungblud started, where he is now. Like he's transitioned as an artist. He certainly feels more mature. A lot of the silliness that we got from things like Parents are completely gone. Even the more like fun pop punk aspects of him that we got on like I Think I'm Okay with MGK.
Well, what was that album? The fucking Teenage Rebellion or something.
Yeah. Like there's this era of him, but now he's got more of like a hard rock vibe, or not even hard rock, almost like classic rock across the board. It feels like a little bit of an identity crisis, but there is a certain level of reassuredness in his press release. So
it's presented well enough. Like, again, I think at the end of the day, I'm really sad that I don't enjoy this new direction. But again, I wouldn't be honest if I was telling you I was. Sam, do you think he's only premiering a couple new songs off of this new album at that intimate
because
free
that's a
show?
total 20 minutes of music,
right? Because every track is
Yeah.
9 songs. The way that like you could really turn around and like force me to respect you here, if you're Yungblud, like really test me and make every song 9 tracks.
Really just like waste your time as much as humanly
You
possible.
don't mean
Yeah.
that way.
Just be as disrespectful to your time as
Right.
like a 2-hour album Every track is 9 minutes. There's only like 11, 12 tracks total.
Exactly.
Malevolence. Oh, no, wait. Sorry. Hold on. Yungblud currently holds 6.8 million monthly listeners on Spotify.
More than Sleep Token.
More than Sleep Token. Malevolence have released new single, If It's All the Same to You. New album where only the truth is spoken out. June 20th via Malevolence Ltd. in partnership with Nuclear Blast Records, and it will feature previous single Trenches. What'd you think of this song and the music video, which we react to over on our YouTube channel? You can go check that out.
2 for 2 with singles, Sam.
We loved Trenches from last year, which has a really like simple but like great music video concept.
Well, I think this one's.
This is a more complex, but also good music video.
Also good video.
Yeah.
And for me, I'm looking at a record like where only the truth is spoken, and I'm thinking this could end up being like something special.
Yeah, that's kind of how I'm feeling, right? Like 2 out of the gate, a band that like you and I have like had in our periphery. It's like, hey, we liked a couple songs. We weren't feeling like a lot of the other songs, but like we'll keep an eye on them. They're generally within the space of bands that we really enjoy. So to have them come out of the gate with just 2 tracks that really speak to both of us.
I mean, you said
promising.
it, like Trenches fucking rules.
Mm-hmm.
And then this track, It's All the Same to You. If It's All the Same to You, I am really enjoying as well. So this is shaping up to be something cool.
They do like a really, I don't want to say toned down, but more classic metal style, heavy on the riffage, but sort of like compile it with like a little bit of like modern breakdowns and stuff like that. There's something in the sauce here that is a little unique to them, and it's really helping them stand out for me. This album includes a feature from Randy Blythe of Lamb of God.
Sure. I'll take it.
It's produced by Josh Wilbur, known for his work with Parkway Drive, Motionless in White, Gojira, A Day to Remember, and more. I feel like I haven't heard Josh Wilbur's name a lot, but it feels like someone who I should be well aware of based on his pedigree.
Yeah.
Right? Like, why is this a name that I'm not seeing regularly?
Well, the thing that threw me there at the end was you saying A Day to Remember, and it's just definitely not the first name that jumps to mind when I think of that band. And like, I think of, Andrew Wade and Drew Folk and those types of people first.
And even Motionless in White, I feel like Josh Wilbur is not something I feel like I've regularly seen pop up before, but clearly he's had his hands in a lot of these bands. There was just a whole list of fucking metal and metalcore bands he had worked with. This band is going to be supporting Alpha Wolf this May on their Australian headlining tour alongside Zuko. Malevolence currently hold over 300,000 monthly listeners on Spotify.
That would be a better North American tour. I think everyone should reconsider where they've decided to
cancel.
Play that.
They should reroute it to North America. Yeah, that's easy. You can do that easily. Static Trust have released new single, Death to the Overground. It's the band's first new song since Crying back in May of last year. Marcus, what'd you think of this?
Well, more than anything else, as far as like timeline between last single and this single, in my mind, it always felt like we were shorted a single between then and now. They did a massive tour with Underoath and performed what felt like 1,000 dates throughout like all of the back half of last year. And sure, they played Crying, but it felt like they were so due for another track at the same time. And, here we are having attended that tour, and it's like 5-6 months later, and we finally have that new track. I'm not going to lie and say I'm, unhappy about that, but like this felt so overdue.
You're pissed because you wish you could have seen the song live because it absolutely would have fucking hit.
Well, and it's also like a fucking minute long too. So, they could have fit it into the fucking set list.
They could have fit it. Part of me wonders if it was there and I just thought they were fucking around on stage.
Maybe.
You know what I mean? It's like, they're just fucking, they're playing a breakdown or whatever.
Right.
It's cool.
They extended a song.
This whole fucking song, like you said, is like 1 minute and 20 seconds. Half of it is just one fucking sick breakdown. It's actually quite incredible if I'm being honest.
So talking about the song, extremely static dress. And music video wise, aesthetically, like also extremely static dress. So this is best of both worlds in that regard. I think I don't think I've seen a single Static Dress fan disappointed in this one. I think that this scratched the itch all of us had.
A little caught off
for new
guard. I think
material
people
from
were
this
saying,
band.
hey, this feels much heavier than anything they've done before.
Caught off guard. I think if anything, people feel a little robbed. This song is so fucking short. More than like I want to.
You're speaking personally at this
yeah.
point. We reacted to this as well over on our YouTube channel. You can go check that out. Marcus, some news broke today that bassist and vocalist Connor Riley had stepped away from the band to deal with some financial hardships accrued during a young age, which is unfortunate. He was the only other original member outside of Ollie Appleyard.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but this is the second time a member has stepped away from this band for like the same exact reason.
I'm not sure that's the case, but it would be bizarre if that had happened.
Unless like Connor had previously stepped away and came back, but
so Connor has not been touring with this band recently, so maybe it is a case that like it's now been made official.
Okay.
So it's like officially he's like, hey, I feel like I'm holding these guys back a little bit. They're all very understanding. You know, I made some bad decisions when I was younger and I've got to like focus on fixing that.
I mean, end of the day, really disappointing to lose like an OG member, but you know, it is what it is. So do we know if this is their final contribution or if this new era truly is a new era?
You know, that's a fair point. This wasn't tied to like the announcement of the single whatsoever. This was
just
like
a
a
little
separate
extra
news story,
homework
so
that you
I don't
added,
know like if he was involved in this song in particular.
Interesting.
This band will embark on a North American headlining tour this April with support from Soulblind, Marion Silver, and more. Static Trust currently claim over 175,000 monthly listeners on Spotify.
This is the one that's called like Crying Across America or something, right?
I think it is exactly
Such
that.
a great tour name.
It's a fun name. And this band, I think, is absolutely going to kill a fucking headliner. So good for them. Go check them out. Finally, Marcos, Dead 7 have released new single Blur.
The blur.
Sam, I've never heard of Dead 7.
Okay, that's just because they got signed by Sharptone Records this week and were not at all on our radar until now. But now they're like fucking mega on my radar. I absolutely loved Blur, had to include it this week. I think this is one of the most fascinating signings Sharptone Records has ever had. It's just like this song in particular doesn't quite have an identity like anything else that I'm listening to. It actually barely has an identity of its own. It feels like such a mishmash of like different styles, but I think that's what makes it such a fascinating track overall.
I think like the biggest quality of the song is just how fucking nuts the production is.
Mm-hmm. Like, and the way that it like
what do you like about this
vocals?
Song? The production was fucking insane.
Mm-hmm.
Right. A lot of distortion, a lot of just like weird shit that they're doing.
So it's like you get this like clean singing right out of the gate, and then you get like this super distorted vocal, and then it kicks into like this breakdown, which is launched by just saying Blur. And I like that they say Blur not with like a Siri voice, but just have someone like flat out come out and say it. It almost feels like a very specific decision there that everybody's going left, so I'm gonna go right. You know what I mean?
Blur sounds like someone like mistranslated Bleh. And
Fun
they just
thought.
think that that's how they're supposed to lead a breakdown off is by saying Blur.
It's a very fun thought.
Right.
Marcus, vocalist Jason Kozik on the song, quote, "It incorporates a lot of what Dead 7 is. When we wrote it, we thought, this is our sound. Here we are. Lyrically, it's about trying to navigate life amidst personal struggles, relationships, and the overwhelming state of the world. It feels like a blur, and you're just trying to survive," end quote. Dead 7 currently command just under 9,000 monthly listeners on Spotify. Go check them out. Yeah, get in on the ground floor. New band. All right, Marcus, let's review some albums.
The Breakdown.
Lotta Florida in the reviews this week, Sam. Starting with Big Ol' Album Volume 1 by A Day to Remember.
Oh shit, here we go again. Another night out here with all my friends. When we walk in the door, everybody's like, man, I ain't looking for trouble.
Yeah.
Key bullets here at the top.
Yeah.
ADTR are a metalcore outfit from Ocala, Florida that formed 20 some odd years ago in 2003. The band have been signed to Fueled by Ramen since August of 2019. Big Ol' Album Volume 1 is the band's 8th studio album, and it released digitally the 21st of March after a surprise physical release a month prior on February 18th. We'll get into that a little bit more
A
later.
month ago was nuts.
Big ol' album, Volume 1, credits a number of producers, including Linkin Park drummer Colin Britton,
Yeah.
ADTR vocalist Jeremy McKinnon,
Yeah.
who also, their last names rhyme. I just realized. Zach Cervini, Sam. Zach Cervini, everybody.
Are you starting
give
to
it
get
up
the
for Zach
impression that,
Cervini.
like,
Is he real? Do they, like, what does it mean?
Zach Cervini is like the only guy who has like the login to like a program everybody needs to use, so he just gets automatically credited on everyone's albums now.
But wait, there's more, and yes, I do think that's the case. Will Putney, Drew Wizard Blood Folk, and Cody Wage War Quistad, I don't know. Big ol' album, Volume 1 follows up 2021's You're Welcome LP, and is also the first album without founding bassist Josh Woodard, who departed the band in October 2021 due to the addressed allegations of past sexual misconduct from 2020. As of this recording, the band claim a staggering 5.3 million monthly listeners on Spotify.
Yeah.
There you have it. New album from a data. Remember.
Yeah, new album.
Follow up to Your Welcome, Sam. I actually wanted to start with my first takeaway, which was sort of an extension of one of those key bullets mentioned earlier. Album rollout equals mixed emotions for me.
Mixed emotions. How?
Still really big fan of how this band rolled the album out.
Yeah.
I think it's really cool that you sort of force the hand of a lot of your audience to go and actually purchase the physical record.
Mm-hmm.
I saw
there are at least 12 guys in a marketing boardroom who were looking at the contract and said, like, what's the quickest, fastest way we can make some money? It's like, what if they had to buy the vinyl? What if they didn't have a choice?
What if they had to? And so a lot of people did, us included. You can see it in the background of the show if you're watching the episode on YouTube.
Yeah.
And like, I think it's just generally cool. I nowadays, right? Like, physical media is in discussion somewhat frequently because a lot of people don't see like the value in it. And like, I think that we speak as collectors. Like, we're still big on vinyl, still big on like CDs. Like, I've purchased like one or two here or there over the past couple of years. Like, I haven't still fully stopped buying those. The one thing that sort of kind of sucks in all this is that
you're still buying CDs.
I've bought one or two. Like, I have Amazing Things on CD from Broco. It's all signed. So,
Okay.
You know, like in those instances where it's like a cool pre-order package, I'm still buying a CD here and there.
I didn't mean to knock us off track here. Go ahead.
I mean, we're starting off track with this review, but I did want to talk about this a little bit more because I find this so fascinating. It just didn't actually fully move the needle for me as far as going and checking this album out prior to today, the 21st, when we were recording this episode, when the album dropped officially on digital.
They'd have to go a step further. They'd have to be like, this is the only way you can listen to this album, and then I would have done it.
Well, push it a little bit more, and we're talking 2 months, and I think we break. I think we do check it out.
Mm-hmm.
I think we do dust off the old fucking vinyl player and insert the vinyl and press play, or maybe we go and find a CD player and we listen to the CD.
Do you think there was a lot of probably discussions around like what the right amount of time is for them to release the album without losing like whatever amount of momentum they would have for people's excitement?
Well, so that's the interesting part of it, which is why like I go back and forth and like, it sucks that I had to wait a month, but I think that I ultimately got more excited for, and this is like, again, where the mixed emotions piece comes from. It's like, this is cool, but I didn't listen to the album. But what ended up happening was I got really hyped to listen to this album in a way that I absolutely like was not for You're Welcome, which is a real traditional album rollout. Taking the unconventional approach really, like it did spark something within me to like really have an eagerness to listen to this album. So all of a sudden you tell me it comes out March 21st. In my mind, I'm like, okay, well, I probably won't pop open the vinyl between now and then, but I will circle on the calendar for me that date and make this appointment listening.
I mean, I guess I'm with you overall. Like,
were you generally like real? I was getting really excited these past couple of days looking forward to this album actually officially dropping for old, like make it real accessible for everyone to hear, right?
It did create like this weird aura around the album that it was like, oh, hey, you're finally going to get to listen to this brand new record, right?
It's got like this
been
cool
out,
album
but, like,
artwork. It's got like pretty good reviews from the people who were willing to crack open the vinyl. So like I'm seeing all that and like I'm buying into the hype leading up to the record.
And I feel like you had a few years there where it's like things with the Day to Remember were down in the dumps. They weren't looking great. So it was nice to get excited about them again overall. Obviously, you and I weren't super into You're Welcome. I don't even think we ever reviewed it on the show. It was just like generally not a great era for this band. So it's like, I think the sentiment from most people is that, okay, is A Day to Remember like actually like legitimately back? Can we be excited about this? And obviously make it make sense. And LeBron, I think, did a lot of work to just sort of like reassure people that like, hey, this is the band that you're familiar with. And like, they're sort of like back in their groove. And even though Feedback felt like a hard pivot, and ultimately I think the second hardest pivot on this record ended up being my favorite song. I do think that like, yes, this band did enough overall to get me excited for the album. So it did feel like appointment listening.
Well, listen, other singles too, Miracle and Feedback, of course, did make this album. So there's also that.
The biggest thing I want to talk about overall really is crossover appeal. That's the most interesting place to start, I think, which is that like obviously A Day to Remember mingle with like country dad rock radio appeal, and they do it very effectively, I think, in particular on their Boys Are Back in Town tribute anthem, All My Friends, which I think is arguably the biggest mainstream appealing song to date. So Feedback did do well when they dropped that. And like, I was a little more less enthusiastic about that song. And I still think I feel generally that way, but this is almost like alternatively the better version of it.
Just to cut in, I believe by far the biggest song off of You're Welcome was... It was called maybe Everything We Need. It was in their top 10 and it had like a lot of like
traction
streams and all that.
Yeah.
It's not there now, so I'm really questioning what the song was, but it was like that, you know, turn the radio on and drive on a very specific like highway that we're naming. And like, so like this whole country dad rock radio appeal thing that's maybe something that maybe didn't fully start on the last record, but they're continuing on, you know, keeping their foot on the gas this go around as well.
I think we've hit the climax with this track in particular. I think All My Friends is absurdly catchy. It feels locked and loaded for radio sing-alongs, and it's like dead set on catching an entirely larger audience overall. I really appreciate the hometown flavor. I think it's nostalgic in ways it's almost parody at this point. The way this band says hometown and then repeats it like under their breath.
It was Everything We Need, but yes, hometown. I think that like the catchiness aspect of this album, of the album, I think is fairly off the charts. Like this is a band that's sort of right back in their element. And that kind of leads me into one of the takeaways I had, especially around like genres, which is easycore equals easy mode.
Yeah, I think I'm in line with where I believe you're going with this point.
Tracks like All My Friends and like, even like Flowers, I guess, where like these just like sudden like twists or sudden like pivots into breakdowns, rather. I think it is Flowers that I'm thinking of, is like the best example of this on the record, where suddenly you go from what is a traditionally like softer track, it suddenly has a breakdown in it. And it just sounds like this band's certainly having fun again, which is another takeaway I had that I didn't really have much to add to outside of tacking it onto this takeaway. But just the fact that swag equals on Sam, A Day to Remember clearly just have like their mojo back.
They're back in their bag a little bit. And I think I'm maybe a little more critical of some of the easier modes that A Day to Remember kick into on this album. But before we get to that,
easier gears.
I mean, I suppose one aspect of it is this general sentiment of just like play a breakdown, right? The crowd looking for a specific thing from this record are going to be undoubtedly pleased by To the Death, which is just fucking a raucous doubling down on mosh pit inducing side of A Day to Remember that so many of us have come to love. It's got setlist stable written all over it. Obviously, whenever A Day to Remember apparently says fight in a fucking metalcore song, you know you're in for one of the better tracks you're going to hear from them.
I'm having a little trouble with your tone in dropping this takeaway. You sound conflicted.
I'm not conflicted. I think this song in particular is really good. Where I push back a little bit is that I think ultimately things like Bad Blood and Miracle end up sort of being just like lesser versions of a song like that. And for me, that does feel a little bit like some of the fat on this record, alongside of something like Feedback, which I think ultimately ended up paying off for this band. So that's just more of like a personal taste thing. But something like Bad Blood, something like Miracle, I think it's like, okay, here's some songs to satisfy a certain legion of the fandom, but I don't think they quite have the staying power of a lot of like the bigger classic hits from A Day to Remember, and then ultimately pale in comparison to something like To the Death. So I guess going 1 for 3 on like the big metalcore breakdown songs is pretty good, but it does show a little bit of the cracks in the armor on this record, that it's not just like a flawless outing for me.
I'm going to stop a couple miles short of calling this any sort of like kintsugi here, the Japanese art of like fucking putting things back together.
It's
and,
not a full revitalization of
whatever.
this band.
But the reason I say that is like the cracks in the armor at this point are aged. Like that was all of Your Welcome. Like that armor set got fucking stomped on and stampeded on by every elephant that we got left on this planet.
So you're saying we're piecing things together?
We are, right. We are fucking molding things and mending things and hammering things back into place.
Yeah.
And I think that for the most part, like this is a pretty decent return to form. I'm fairly happy with this record. It is.
I think that like pretty decent though is like read between the lines in your statements.
Titans, right? So that's not like I come away from an album like this hoping for A Day to Remember to reclaim like the belt, which they don't fully do.
Yeah.
But I think that as far as like my personal view of them, where it is now versus like the last time it was this high back in 2019, fresh off, the Marshmallow track, like we're coming back to that level again. Like that is like this is all acceptable for me.
It is. It's all acceptable. It's all pretty decent.
I get
We're
that.
coming
I know
back,
the angle
right?
that you were, right.
I want to talk a little bit about like the emotional side of this band. Like Day to Remember have always been very apt at providing like a heartfelt ballad, and while they're here on the album in the form of Same Team, Flowers, and Closer Than You Think, none of them quite transcend to the levels of like Have Faith in Me.
Really like Flowers. You're not wrong though in that there's not a or at least I don't look at this record and think to myself like maybe outside of LeBron, just because especially right now that's having like a real LeBron, Sam, I don't know if you've noticed,
I can't say that I have.
On TikTok everyone is writing songs about LeBron, and this band somehow suddenly beat everyone to that punch.
It's like they knew
a little bit. Yeah. A little bit.
Why is everyone writing songs about LeBron?
Because he's just been fucking legendary for 30 years.
Okay, so they started writing songs about him?
I think it's because he turned 40 and everyone's realized that like he's the Tom Brady of the NBA.
Okay.
Like he's just not going anywhere for another 5 years. So like let's enjoy him and celebrate him while we have him.
So like minstrels, they've started writing like songs about his legacy?
Sam, there's a song that's just LeBron James.
Yeah, I heard it. It's on this album. It's very good.
Right. That's what I'm saying is how did they beat everyone to this? I think that's really special. Cool.
I think a lot of these songs are like on the same level as something like We Got This off of Bad Vibrations. Like it's good. It's got like a balladry to it. It's like
You're
more
still talking about like the emotional
pop punk side of them. Yes.
Faith in Me side of things.
I just like I like that they showcase like the wholesome side of this band, and I think Same Team has like a certain level of flavor that I appreciate. But again, we're not talking about like peak here. Is what I'm trying to establish.
I think you're not giving. I think Flowers for me is quietly one of my favorite tracks on this record. It's got like a little bit of vocal flair from Jeremy McKinnon that I'm not fully used to, like trying some things vocally that it like kind of catches me off guard.
Okay, so let's talk about trying things, Marcos. I think Die For Me is quite literally a Bring Me the Horizon B-side, and it's evident from the opening vocal delivery. Never mind that Ollie Sykes has a writing credit.
I was going to say, so why is that,
certifying it as such? Yes.
Right.
I think it's novel, though.
Die For Me equals Song of the Year contender.
Oh, stop it. You're not going to give a Day
This
to
chorus
Remember
goes stupid, Sam.
Song of the Year contender on a track that didn't make Posthuman 2.
I don't know. Well, Bring Me the Horizon's floor is,
Okay,
cutting
sure.
room floor, but
it's not even the best song on the album. It's not even close.
I think they've got some really great songs, but I look at it differently, Sam.
Sure. In what way? In what capacity?
I don't know. I did have, speaking of like songs of the year, Feedback's not one of them, but I did have one final update
certainly is not.
on that one, which is it is not the worst song of last year like I claimed when it dropped.
Worn down. What do they call this? Stockholm Syndrome?
Sam, if I wanted to hear your feedback, I'd ask her whatever the lyrics
Precisely.
are.
I think Silence, with its almost old school hard rock leaning metal edge, coupled with that like faint reserved delivery in the verses, makes for a unique addition to A Day to Remember's catalog, but not quite an essential one.
Not a favorite track off of here, but like when I heard it, I'm like, oh, this was necessary because of how different it is.
You're putting together an all-star team to support LeBron. What 3 songs are you taking?
I'm taking Kevin Love, bro. Die For Me. just the hot piece of ass, right? We're throwing that right in.
Sure.
And then I'm taking Flowers, bro. Some J.R. Smith, just got a little smooth with it, just a little wet.
Sure.
Just a little wet. From 3, corner 3.
Sure, what?
Top of the key, you don't even know.
I know what you mean.
And then honestly, bro, I'm taking a little bit of Luka Doncic, right? Same team all of a sudden. Was on the Mavs, suddenly on the Lakers, right? That's me.
I feel like you're delivering a certain amount of disrespect to the death. Did that song not click
I just
for you
figured
personally?
you would take it. What do we do? I think All My Friends Here is like the only song we haven't talked about that's really good, by the way.
Yeah.
I liked it.
I liked it. I wouldn't say it was necessarily a standout on here. I think I would go like alongside LeBron. I would probably take like To the Death.
Can I tell you something?
Wait, did you say we didn't talk about All My Friends?
I feel like we didn't.
Oh, I'm sorry. You totally threw me. No, that's where I opened up. All My Friends, I think, is an absolutely fucking fantastic song. Yes, I take that with a bullet. Absolutely.
Got
All
it.
My Friends is one of the best songs.
I thought you opened up fully with To Death.
All My
Till
Friends
Death. To
is the best song on this record. I think it has all of the potential in the universe to be a staple in A Day to Remember's catalog, and arguably their biggest song of all time if it hits a certain audience. I just think that like this is like a certain level of like we've dumbed the formula down so well, and like. This is almost like A Day to Remember on like fucking like easy mode. Like,
okay, yeah, this is all coming back to me.
It's crazy. I think how effectively they just write like a pop rock anthem here. Like this for me is the kind of thing that could absolutely help this band explode. You know what I mean?
I got 2 final takeaways. I know what you mean. I got 2 final takeaways, Sam. I think I'm a little over my 5, but Closer Than You Think, maybe not the best closer on this record. Like
it's fine. It's fine.
It kind of ends it on a dud for me.
Silence and Closer Than You Think is not the 1-2 punch you need it to be.
It's not the one to. This actually would have been a real clean 10.
It
And that's
as a matter of
including like the
fact.
bad blood and the feedback that, maybe we're not fully in love with, but
The irony is this band theoretically has a clean 10 that they're holding in reserve
so
for
that's my
volume
final
2.
takeaway, which is volume 1 equals question mark. Like, what does volume 2 even begin to look like? Is this sort of sold to us as a double album and we get sort of another record in September around that time? Or does the volume 1 thing just leave it open for this band to continue doing this as long as they feel like, and maybe volume 2 doesn't come until like May 26?
I mean, clearly they took more than one thing from Bring Me the Horizon.
Oh, shit.
Where they were like, yeah, we can do sort of like catalog of albums that are like interconnected in some capacity. I guess what's curious about this is that like, it's just sort of like a naming convention that I don't think I put too much weight in. I think we will likely get a volume 2, and that's probably the end of it, and it should come fairly quick. My assumption is that this band went into the studio, wrote a lot, and ended up being pretty happy with most of it.
Seems that way. And,
right?
I think, you know what, for the most part, I think they earned the right to feel that way with the majority of the material on here.
Here's my takeaway at the end. I think ultimately this is a fun, albeit shallow record that ends up being a solid addition to the discography of similar sounding and aspiring records. It does more right than wrong, stays true to this band's identity while also finding them dabbling with some different takes on their otherwise overly familiar sound. Feedback might be a dad rock rager, but it's a decent one, I guess, in the overall compendium of dad rock songs. All My Friends might feel a bit saccharine, and its ambitions are obvious, but I'd argue it's a damn good interpretation of modern country rock anthems. And to the death of LeBron, find this band excelling at their strengths and knighting new future classics into their set list. I feel like overall, Day to Remember came out of the gate, delivered a solid B of a record.
3-4 new staples for the set list. It's a pretty good album.
It's not terrible. I feel like we're back in like bad vibrations era. We've washed the bad taste of You're Welcome out of our mouth.
Is it time for Self-Help Fest to return?
Theoretically, I think so. Yeah.
Big ol' fest.
I wonder if there's not enough value there when A Day to Remember can just sort of be thrown up at the very top of most of these other festivals.
Sure, but it's not their festival.
No, it's not.
More money. More problems. I don't know. Anything fans had to say about this one?
Fans did, but Marcus, you haven't given this a letter grade before we move on.
What do you give it?
I gave it a solid B.
I went to the B+.
All right.
I'm pretty happy with this one.
You're a little more optimistic than I, or you enjoyed it a little bit more than I did. Yes. So that makes sense, Marcos. Yes, we did ask fans over on Twitter and Patreon to provide their thoughts on the album, Marcos. Camtaro said, it feels very classic them, not necessarily mold-breaking in terms of creativity, but I found a reason to appreciate and enjoy every song without skipping. It's definitely going to sound cooler live. I'm positive towards it.
I definitely see myself skipping some tracks a couple months removed from this one.
Okay. Casey said, there's some fun stuff on there. My favorites aren't the singles. The whole album had a more pop-punk / breakdown feel, more of what they used to do. I could listen to this album for days, already have. I will say that I did listen to this album a lot to kind of get a feeling for it. It was sort of easy to just sort of like rip this one over and over again.
It's a short one. It's under 40.
Ambassador Michael said, honestly, this is what I expect A Day to Remember on Fueled by Ramen to be. It's what I anticipated You're Welcome being. It's silly, has some heaviness and huge choruses. There are a few flat songs. None of them feel memorable to me. It's good enough, but not great. 5 out of 10.
I mean, it was missing a lot of the punches that this record had, but You're Welcome was this. It just had flatter songs. I don't know how to really explain that.
Theoretically, I guess I would consider You're Welcome maybe a stepping stone to get us here.
Okay.
Kylie said, lyrically, mid, but fun beats and a hint of old, A Day to Remember for sure. Flowers and Die For Me are probably the best songs besides Make It Make Sense.
I mean, not to boil it down completely, lyrically mid but fun beats is this band's entire discography.
Fair. Emily Bacon said, this is such a banging album. Reminds me why I fell in love with A Day to Remember in the first place.
I think that's the
general sentiment.
The overarching sentiment that I've seen about this record. Which is like, if I'm A Day to Remember, I feel like I must be ecstatic here, like with that being the case.
You just mean like in terms of like the overall... Oh, you mean with A Day to Remember's feeling for like how people felt about the record?
If I'm scrolling my fucking algorithm, like my FYP, and that's the general thing that I'm seeing, I'm pretty thrilled about that.
Yeah, that makes sense. Marcos, Dadbod Daryl said, literally just a big thank you. This album, coming from You're Welcome, is bringing us back to homesick vibes, but with a fun new twist with the catchy hooks and melodies. This album is addicting.
There's a moment lyrically on this record towards the back half where like Jeremy he kind of lingers on it for like a fraction of a second longer than I feel like he should, saying the words "thank you." And in a way, it really, for me, kind of like completely put the bow on the You're Welcome era.
I understand.
And put that one to bed. And I'm like, okay, now we're on the other side of that.
Reading between the lines, I feel like.
Sure.
Scene Labs podcast said, A Day to Remember knew they had to make a big move with this album with the way their last record performed with fans, and they got 90% of the way there. Big Ol' Album Volume 1 is their best release since Common Courtesy.
It's a fun take. Big shout out to Scene Labs podcast as well.
Ricky said, 7 out of 10. Solid album. Has the classic A Day to Remember sound feel to it, but they play it too safe with no real surprises to make it really stand out amongst their other records. Still slaps, though.
Fair.
Atlas is going to Warp said, unironically an incredible album. The instrumentals are more mature and nuanced than their old work, and the lyrics are more fun than the ones on You're Welcome, while still maintaining the energy from the music. We are so fucking back.
So fucking back.
So absolutely fucking back. And finally, Ryan over on Patreon said, it's catchy and fun and a great summer album, in my opinion. I have an old car, so I've been listening to the CD the past few weeks. Yeah.
I'm jealous of that experience.
Living in the moment, doing it as intended. Songs I thought I hated at first, like All My Friends, are now stuck in my head 24/7. Flowers and Closer Than You Think remind me of songs like Have Faith in Me from back in the day. Same Team might be the best song in the album, and it definitely stands out as the most creative to me. It's so obvious that the song from the Bring Me the Horizon melody is Die For Me.
It is, just to briefly touch on that a little bit more, it's crazy what I thought were Jordan Fish-isms coming out and actually being Ollie Sykes-isms.
I mean, it could be a combination of both.
Some of the songwriting goes.
It could be some level of Jordan Fish's influence over Ollie Sykes' delivery. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Because it's still an era of Bring Me the Horizon that was closely tied to Jordan Fish. This doesn't ever reach the highs of the holy trinity of Homesick, What Separates Me From You, and Common Courtesy, but it's right in line with Bad Vibrations as a solid offering with some great songs.
Okay.
All right, Marcus, and we got one last review this week. The Place After This One by Underoath.
Last but certainly not least, some key bullets here at the top. Underoath are a metalcore outfit from Tampa, Florida, a legendary one at that, that formed about 1 million years ago in 1997.
Which is cool because when they flash their ID, you know immediately that they can drink alcohol.
It's true.
Yeah.
The band have been signed to Monarch Heavy since February of 23. The Place After This One is the band's 10th studio album, and it arrives the 28th of March. Additionally, it was produced by Dannon Reed Rector, who helped produce, Sam, get this, Grayscale's latest record,
Shut
The Heart.
the fuck up.
Sunday at Foxwoods by Boys Like Girls, and more.
Can I say something?
You are allowed to say something on this podcast.
What the fuck? What is this choice?
Right?
What a bizarre choice. I'm thinking of like every single second I spent listening to this record and trying to decide if I think this producer was the right decision.
Well, I'm sure we'll touch on a lot of those feelings.
Okay.
The Place After This One follows up 2022's Voyeurist LP, not produced by Dan and Reed Rector.
Yeah.
And is also the band's first album since 2004's They're Only Chasing Safety to not feature rhythm guitarist James Smith, who was kicked from the band. I don't know if you remember this, Sam.
Yeah.
In March of 23, like 3 days prior to a tour for Undisclosed Differences.
Yeah, he didn't like the direction they were going in with the producer.
I thought you were going to say with the catering.
Yeah, the catering.
For like the tour.
The catering is
The
very
catering.
funny. Could you imagine if we ever had a band? I actually, you know what? I do feel like with all the amount of band breakups and like member departures, finding out somebody left because they weren't happy with like, what do they call that? The rider?
The rider.
Yeah. Somebody didn't have like a say in the rider and left. If that was the reason behind James Smith leaving, who could say?
As of this recording, the band claim a kick-ass 1.5 milli monthly listeners.
Solid.
Over on Spotify. Spencer Chamberlain.
Yeah.
Had a lot to say on this record, Sam. I'm going to start it here. I've said this before and I'll say it again. I'm proud of everything we've ever done and stand behind it wholeheartedly, but I don't think I've felt this way about an album we've made since Define the Great Line. Now, that's not to say they sound the same, but I'll never forget the feeling I had when I listened to what we created for the first time all the way through on that album. I haven't felt that way again until we did the same thing with this new album. I had this overwhelming feeling listening back to TPATO Tapato, which is turns out I really don't like this.
Say the place after
albums.
this one, please.
I don't like how this album name is shortened whatsoever. They continued, with every hair on my body standing on end, standing on tippy toe, thinking, holy shit, this is it.
Let's do a hard pause. Insane for this band to be like, I haven't felt this good about an album since Defy the Great Line, one of the most historically important metalcore records in all of fucking history. It feels like setting yourself up for failure, but also it's a great way to hype your album up as something special.
Well, right. And I mean, we've had this conversation a dozen times, but specifically reading
You know what? We do say this, but it's like, could you imagine if My Chemical Romance came back and it'd be like, this is the most excited I've been for a record since the Black Parade? And we would be like, you need to calm down.
So also 2 eras ago, shut the fuck up. On that note, though, like I read that, and specifically, like, even taking those words to find the Great Line in vain, like, I wanted to take a shot.
In vain?
In vain. I just wanted to take a shot reading that.
Yeah.
Spencer continues, when creating music, I always come from a place of... Sorry.
He always comes. What's the
Right. So when creating music, I always come from a place of, what do I want to hear when I'm driving my car?
Sure.
I fucking love that, by the way, Sam.
Yeah,
like, that's such an OG, old school approach.
Yeah.
I fucking shout out Unc, Spencer Chamberlain.
How would you feel if you found out he drives a Cybertruck? Would you look at this statement differently?
I would look at him very differently. And they continue, what's missing from heavy music that I'm not getting anymore? And that is matched with... But all 4 of these guys have to feel that way as well, which is a very, very hard feat to accomplish, but we finally did it. I felt like there's a sense of urgency and anxiety missing from modern heavy music. I wanted to feel like I did when I was a kid, when I first discovered heavy music. We were chasing a vibe more than anything. There are so many elements from the past that I love on this album, yet so many new territories we've always been too scared to explore.
How can we, let's pause again.
We'll pause.
Do you feel like at this point, the statements being made correlate with your experience listening to this record?
Specifically, a sense of urgency and anxiety missing from modern heavy music, I think was reflected in much of what I heard listening to this album, and we'll get into whether or not that's even a positive or negative takeaway on my part, Sam. We're going to wrap up here. Lyrically, this album explores many different topics, from addiction and loss to where I see us going as a species and more, which is such a crazy way to just end that, Sam.
Yeah.
They continued.
It's like if he made a statement that was like, this album's about like Batman, fucking fishing, and like,
ever notice how the Earth is a little flat?
Yeah, as a society, crumble and die before we're able to see the end of time.
But the personal anger and frustration I went through, I got to write about from the other side, which was awesome. I had clarity on the situation before writing about it, whereas normally I'm in the thick of it, just trying to tread water while writing. I feel like I could talk for hours about our new album.
Bro, you did.
But I truly do believe this is the start of the next chapter for Underoath. This begins the next 20 years. And it sounds like you have a lot to say, Sam, so I'm handing it off. What are some takeaways?
Just this idea that like 20 years from now, Underoath are on like their 7th farewell tour. You know what I mean? Like where we get into like the boomer era of like
eight more albums.
Goodbye.
I haven't felt this way about an album since I wrote Tapato.
Yeah. Just absolutely insane to imagine like some of these metalcore bands up there performing at like their late 50s. But I guess it's Theoretically possible. God knows Slipknot's fucking doing it.
Yeah.
What do I want to talk about? I made a goal for myself after I listened to this album one time. I'm like, on the second playthrough, I need to find 5 things that I like.
Oh, no. Really?
Thing 1.
That's the energy.
I think the vocal effects on Aaron Gillespie in the track Devil are really fucking neat. Later on, there's like gang vocals layered over like Spencer's delivery, which I think is also kind of a cool feature. And I
Devil, just to cut you off, Sam, a little bit. One of my favorite tracks on here.
I also think Devil is a very good song on here. There's certain things that this band does that I find like really work for me on this album, and then other things that this band does that really fall flat. Some of the vocal effects in particular, I think really work. There's a lot of like, you know, I said I couldn't decide if I like this producer or not. And I think partially it's because like, I think the producer like underserves them in a lot of ways and then like overserves them in ways that like ends up really working for me. Like the fingers are in like the pie too deep. And then other times it's like they completely miss the pie and then like knock over a glass.
So, I mean, that's my major takeaway about this album as a whole. And I've got like a couple of like or like some branches from that takeaway.
Right. They spider out into other thoughts.
But my main takeaway about this album is that all of the great songs on this record, which there are a handful of, are due to the experimentation that Underoath are clearly extremely open to taking or doing or what have you.
Agree 100%.
And on, you know, flip that coin around, the other side of it is every time this band crashes and burns on this record, which is frequently, it's also due to that same experimentation, which is why I have
we presented our thoughts differently, but I think ultimately you and I came to the same conclusion.
Well, Sam, I think 2 words to summarize all of that. It's just mixed emotions. I think that the absolute most fascinating piece of this record, however, is the production, but I don't know if I would ever pin the successes or the failures of moments on this record wholly on the producer.
I wouldn't either. I think what I'm saying is that like the producer for me strikes me as a really interesting choice, and I feel like I can see examples of where that paid off and examples where it didn't.
Okay.
You know, I want to talk a little bit about what you said. Another thing I really liked was the production on Loss, which I think is insanely cool, and the more this band fucked around with electronics, the more I was enjoying the proceedings.
For sure, Sam. There's a vibrancy on, especially like the introductory moments of every track have this like very buzzing bit of life to them. It's very vibrant. There's just these electronic touches that, you know, it may end up serving as the backbone of the track, or maybe it's just something they're briefly doing. Like hell, I think it's I want to say it's All the Love Is Gone, one of the lead singles off of this record. Actually, it's not. I think it was Survivor's Guilt, another single, which starts off sounding like a fucking track straight off of Ammo by Bring Me the Horizon.
It's almost a false sense of security this band lures you into, like your idea of where a song is going, and then oftentimes it capitalizing on that, and other times it's sort of underwhelming you.
Yeah. I mean, my thoughts are a little all over the place. I wanted to get a couple of things out of the way, which is starting this album off with Generation No Surrender is such a fucking fumble right off the bat.
It's like, that's like a quintessential example of just this band doing something that is almost most familiar to them, and then like it somehow is where they're most uncomfortable.
Lyrically at their most stale possible like way to be there. But to follow it up immediately with a track like Devil, which is instantly so creative and different, is like such a, it makes the difference in quality between tracks on this record immediately apparent and glaring.
Do you get the impression in some capacity that Teeth being the lead single and not connecting necessarily caused this band to pivot in a different direction where you wish they would have leaned more into what they were doing there to really showcase this album? Because I think songs like Generation No Surrender and Survivor's Guilt deeply undersold the better aspects of this album.
Yeah.
Whereas Teeth, I think, is actually a good example of the coolest things to find on this record.
Teeth has become one of my favorite Underoath tracks, period.
Mm-hmm. It embodies the spirit of the more interesting experimental sides of this band.
Well, right. To the point that I remember looking at this track list and seeing that it didn't start off with Teeth and being massively disappointed because I wanted it to really just sort of ring in the new era of this band, like as physically, tangibly close to possible as you could by, you know, knighting it the opening spot on the record. And when they don't, and they do Generation No Surrender, which is a more traditional Underoath track that just has, you know, less going on for it.
It
less
is, but it isn't.
uniqueness.
A big part of the problem with this record is that, like, Generation No Surrender is like, yeah, actually it does feel like an urgent, like, very fast moving song. But
That's
think
all of the tracks on here though. That is an inherent part of the DNA to this record is that every track is fucking, like, they for the most part are balls to the wall. Like, you've got a track like And Then There Was Nothing, which is just like urgent.
Yeah, but they are and they aren't. I think part of the problem is that, like, this band wants to be metaphorically heavy without ever actually being heavy, and I think that
That's
really
fair.
undersells them. So, like, I think you could have saved some of these more lackluster songs if they were just able to sort of meet Underoath at the level of what they're selling me. Like, Define the Great Line is an incredible heavy record. I think if some of these songs were heavy like Define the Great Line and were a supplement to the more experimental tracks, then we would have had something. But you just sort of chose to experiment in two different ways, and one of them ends up being really fascinating, and the other one ends up just sort of feeling like a waste of time.
So I don't fully agree with what you have to say, but there are parts of it where I'm all over and I agree. I guess where I get caught up is that I think that I don't know. Maybe I do fully agree.
I appreciate your urgency and anxiety. I appreciate a sort of abstract approach, but, like, the final product ended up being less compelling than if you had actually just done the thing. You know what I mean?
Well, right. Okay. So no, where I disagree is, like the whole manufactured heaviness. I forget exactly how you phrased it. Like metaphorically heavy.
Yes.
Like Teeth is not a deathcore track at all, but like when the riff and the breakdown itself hits,
when you do it into like this crunchy electronic stuff, that's the experimental stuff
in a way that, like, you know, maybe some of the stuff Plot and You does right now isn't the heaviest shit they've ever played, but like it still hits in that same way. It still knocks you on your ass.
I do not disagree that there are, like I said, angles and sides of this band on this album where, like, they do really click in terms of, like, how they're presenting themselves and what they're going for. I think alternatively, though, you have these weird sort of muddling middle ground songs that end up just feeling like a disappointment from either sort of way you come at it.
So I want to pivot a little bit for my next takeaway, which is the fact that I had the complete opposite experience with this record that I did Voyeurist, where I remember listening to Voyeurist once and thinking to myself, like, Underoath are fucking geniuses. This is a masterpiece. This, you know, closing out with this 10-minute track, this is brilliant. Like,
I did not have the same experience with this record.
I know you didn't. I remember your feelings on
I remember
that
it being
record.
incredibly flat. Yes.
But then on repeated listens, I would go back to it and more and more color would just disappear from that record, if that makes sense.
Okay.
And I would feel just less and less and less enamored with it, to the point where eventually, like, I ultimately obviously do not think that was in any way a masterpiece, nor did that end up on, like, our top 10 list even when it was shared that year.
Yeah.
The opposite happened this time around, where I remember listening to this record, and by the time I was done with it, I had wrapped on Outsider, the closing track. I was super disappointed. But as you do with this, you know, obviously reviewing an album, come back to it, spend more time with it. On repeated listens, I just found more and more to love. And this sort of reflects your experience, even though it seemed like that happened through Gritted Teeth. I didn't have much trouble finding things to like on this record with repeated listens. I think the more I listened to it, the more I realized, like, hey, you know, I really like this weird little electric callboy verse stuff that they're doing on All the Love Is Gone. I love the two-man, you know, like through all these different decades, the two-man of Spencer and Aaron is still one of like the most national treasure type beats in the history of our scene. I think that both of those two vocalists shine on this record. You know, Teeth, for me, one of my favorite songs of last year, one of my favorite songs from this band in general. Cannibal, like a lot of the weird production this band is doing. I think Loss is a really great track as well. There's just more and more that I realized I liked, even though initially I felt like kind of all of it was very blah, outside of like Teeth again, which I already had really strong feelings about.
I mean, that is also how I started.
Right, but the way that you...
I approached it, yes.
The way that you sold how this review was going to go is really scraping the barrel for things to like. And you haven't really gotten into the rest of your takeaways, but I was worried it was going to be a lot of like, hey, you know, Spencer screams cool on Vultures once, next takeaway type thing, where you're just listing bullets to get through to the review so that you can give it a D and move on with your life at the end. So, and I'm glad that doesn't seem to be the direction you're going to take, but that was tonally the expectations that you set for me.
I sort of just wanted to present my experience listening to this record, where the first time I found it to just sort of be polarizing and not at all something that like was speaking to my sensibilities. So then I sort of went in with a different mindset and ended up finding a lot of things that I liked. I just don't think that like ultimately listening to it a few times that I was fully sold on it. So just to knock it out real quick, like I think Teeth and Shame are the best 1-2 punch on this record. And I think whenever Aaron Gillespie takes the wheel, even if only for a moment, it really helps songs pop. These two are experimental, heavily electronic influenced tracks, and they show a much more interesting side of Underoath, which I mentioned earlier. It's like, this is where I was finding Underoath to be like really compelling as a band on this record in particular. I think Outsider really lets Aaron shine, and its soothing voice really sells this closer. Additionally, I like the sort of like angelic delivery that they coupled with like a soft touch of piano key very towards the end of the closer.
Hated this as a closer initially, by the way.
But it grew on you?
Have grown to really appreciate its placement on the record, yes.
But then, like, where I ultimately end up is, like, I think an unfortunate aspect of this record is that it feels like it really fails to capitalize on many of the different aspects that it presents. So, like, it never truly feels like it attains any level of satisfyingly heavy instrumentals. Its melodies rarely hit, and most choruses tend to fall flat. The aspects of this record that I really like, the electronics and vocal distortions, can occasionally fail to find their footing, so I'm left with areas of this band excelling in their experimental era and alternatively flailing. So like a great example of that is like Vultures, which like you were talking about this idea that songs all sort of start like really wondrous and fascinating, and then you end up with something like Vultures, which just ends up feeling really repetitive.
Vultures is probably my least favorite track on this record.
I think it's a flat out miss.
But
I don't think it's terribly far away from something like A Generation No Surrender.
Right.
Either.
I think those are the 1-2 punch for blandest tracks on here.
It's like conceptually I'm interested. I like the themes of sort of like hitting rock bottom and finding value in yourself. I like the aggressive nature of fighting back against addiction. There's one song that's like, I choose to like love myself or something along those lines, which I thought
happens
was like
later in the record,
like a powerful like sort of like call to arms from like a personal perspective. But I rarely find individual lyrics that really worked for me, so it was like they were small like moments where like I really thought that like in terms of like the words on paper, like we really like said something that was brilliant or that I hadn't really like considered. Ultimately, I just sort of find it to be sort of like overarching swaths of like the concept. I find it to be like an incredibly interesting record. Like all of post-hiatus Underoath, like this band came back and they came back different and they tried a lot of different things. And I think that makes them interesting.
Can I jump in here?
No. But I think that like it fails to really find any consistency. So I'm left with a handful of songs I like and a handful of songs I've already forgotten about.
So for me, the consistency's in the energy of the record, right? I really do think that if they're selling you on urgency, if that's the promise, that it's absolutely what they deliver on this record. I think that this record starts with a really breakneck pace and it ends with a breakneck pace. Like beginning, middle, end, it is just a record that is coming at you 1,000 miles per hour.
I mean, I think you're overselling slightly.
I had this on like fucking 30 on the car stereo on the ride over, Sam, and it really cemented a lot of these feelings for me.
I feel I had a maybe slightly different experience.
I think that it is absolutely a heavy experience that I think there are moments on here that like just definitely scratch that itch for me. Even though I feel like it's not exactly the promise of this record. Again, the Define the Great Line comparison is more just Spencer's feelings about how, you know...
Yeah, I'm not going to get lost in like
whatever,
press release, like marketing for an album. But
I think I ultimately come back to what was my main takeaway as far as just experimentation goes, and that this record is a really fun time from a... like just sitting and watching it all, hearing it all unfold standpoint, as far as like, and it's a completely different band and they don't really share a lot of similarities outside of the fact that their albums lately have sort of panned out this way. Bad Flower, where it's like, man, part of the fun in watching an album like this unfold is just seeing this band pull off something cool is so gratifying. And it's also gratifying watching them crash and burn and die in as gory fashion as they do on certain tracks, where it's like, man, if this band is ever bad in this era, and especially on this record, it's not for lack of trying, as far as like, it's not because they're writing boring things. They're throwing so many ideas at the
think
wall.
You're right 80% of the time. I think there are some boring things in here.
And again, this is just a very, very broad, where like, I think if you do get into the nooks and crannies and the specifics of things, yes, there are cracks in the argument that I'm trying to make. But I think overall, as a record, I think that they're trying so many cool things, and watching them crash and burn is half of the fun because it happens half of the time.
Yes, it's a much more interesting listening experience. Like, I'm not going to argue.
That's what I mean. Like, it's not
like,
because
I'm
this is boring.
With you. Like, I liked listening to this record and kind of like seeing the different ideas this band tried out. I think it makes for an interesting album to discuss. I just think that like ultimately when I finished it, is it like an album that I recommend you check out? Sure, but I don't know if it's one that I recommend you check out because I think it ended out being really great.
Well, so I don't recommend this album because it's an A+. I recommend it because it is absolutely an album that you have to hear this year, just to kind of wrap your head around what it is this band did and tried and attempted. I love the production. I love the producer choice. I like what they brought to the table. I like how fucking weird this album is willing to get, how weird this band is willing to get. And again, does it culminate in a bunch of tracks that don't work for me? Generation No Surrender, Vultures.
Survivor's Guilt is kind of a soft miss.
I had a little bit to say earlier that sounded positive about Then There Was Nothing, but I actually think that's one of the worst tracks on this record. And then I walk away from this record and look at tracks like Teeth and Shame, Loss,
Devil,
Spinning in Place even, and I'm like, I'm really impressed.
I think that maybe the slightly frustrating thing is that I think there's an aspect of this band where had they doubled down even further, we probably would have ended up with like a really great album. And I think that like I wouldn't say it's an unwillingness, but I think part of their approach ended up like undercutting their vision.
More than fair.
What's your letter grade?
Well, one thing that I hope the audience is taking away is that it took both you and I numbers of listens before we really understood what it is we heard and walked away with certain things that we liked and didn't like. So if this one's initially not clicking for you, I do challenge you to listen to it again just to see if maybe there is something more to it. And maybe you hate it more. That's fine, whatever. But I think there's a ton to like in this record, and I really challenge you to go find some of that. Letter grade that I would give it, I think I did enjoy this less than the Dare to Remember album that we discussed. So I think probably just a flat B for me. I think it's actually probably the best Return era Underoath album we've gotten.
I would almost give you that, but I've been incredibly cold on the full album listening experience from this band and have really only found a few individual songs that I've liked since their return.
I think this one's so much more memorable than the record whose name I can't remember, the 2015 one or whatever.
I know. I want to say
2016.
I want to say like in something, but I can't quite get there.
And then obviously like Voyeurist, I had positive feelings on initially. Still like a song or two, but right now really don't look back that fondly on that record. I think this is easily like that record for me.
I think this is like a C for me. It's again, it has a vision, and I think has its successes, but as a full listening experience, ends up feeling a bit like a fascinating disaster.
A C is what? Is that like firmly outside of their top 5 records?
For me, all right, like out of the gate.
It's Underoath, so like they haven't always been, perfect.
It might round out the bottom of like the 5 because I wasn't super fond of, like you said, Voyeurist or the album
I didn't love
prior to
Disambiguation.
that. Didn't love Disambiguation, but I wonder if I would
10?
be more generous to it going back and re-listening. And then everything prior to that I think is nearly perfect.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Like
I think it's an album that has to be heard.
Yeah, I guess I'm with you there.
It is a B. It's not a B+. It's not an A-. It's not an A. It's not an A+. But it must be heard.
Okay, fair enough. Thanks for listening, everybody. If you're hearing us on Spotify or Apple, please leave 5 stars. If you're watching on YouTube, please drop a comment, leave a thumbs up. Thanks. We love you. Bye.
Good boy.